gotta love Eric July. Like he's an amazing guy to listen to. Very opinionated, knows what he's talking about. He's not one of those YouTubers that just gets on there and wings it. This dude's very informative about, especially when it comes to comic book world or really anything that is nerd related. He is really qualified to speak on it. I think I was trying to think of another guy that I really feel that way with. Nerdrotic is one of those that I feel like okay is really grounded, especially in the comic book world. I don't always agree with his takes, but when it comes to like Star Wars and so forth, I don't like the aspect that Nerdrotic is, and a lot of these others are like, hey, we're done with Star Wars completely and totally. I feel like if you love something, you got to maybe stick with it and you know advocate for the change that you want to see. Don't just be like, I'm done completely and totally with it. That's my personal opinion, but I love his take on this. People who eat up Hollywood's nostalgia bait are part of the problem. I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that, and I think it all goes back to Luke Skywalker. I feel like with Luke Skywalker, um, fans were so caught up in that they were excited about this, like this deep fake of Luke Skywalker coming on screen. And I'm like, recast him. And everybody's like, no, no, you can't recast Mark Hamill in that role. Yeah, you can. Mark Hamill's like 70. I'm sorry. Would if Star Wars had come out in the 90s, Star Wars would have come out in the 90s. And let's say Mark Hamill was 20 something years old. And then, they recast him uh, for this upcoming, for The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett. I can understand why people would be pissed. I really could. I can understand because he'd still be young enough that you'd be like, oh, okay, we would like to see, Mark Hamill in that role. But literally, he has been like, it was in the early 80s, like the early 80s when he was portraying this particular version of Luke Skywalker on the screen. And then the last that we saw of him was a terrible rendition of that character in, what was it? Not The Force Awakens, but, well, really just in the sequel trilogy. It was just terrible. Um, The Last Jedi. But I mean, so I'm like, I think maybe it's not, I'm not going to say it's time to retire the character. It's definitely not. They can go and make something with this character. They really can. They just need to let go of the nostalgia of it and recast this character. That's my personal opinion. But I don't think people should be flocking to these shows either, simply because of the nostalgia aspect of it. Is it good? That needs to be the first thing that people need to focus on. Instead of being all caught up in whether or not Luke Skywalker is back in the Book of Boba Fett. Who cares? Says YouTuber Eric July recently declared that people who eat up Hollywood nostalgia bait, like the most recent episode of the Book of Boba Fett, are part of the problem. July's comments came in a recent video on his YouTube channel titled More Franchises Resort to Nostalgia Bait for a Quick Boost. That's no doubt about that. They're like, hey, we'll give you really crappy material all season long, but you'll totally forget about it when we bring on this nostalgia. Like, I mean, I feel like that saved the sequel trilogy to a certain extent. With a lot of fans, was at least we got to see some nostalgia out of it, and the nostalgia was completely ruined. It was only there to kill them off in the most part. But I just really, I don't like getting caught up in the nostalgia in a lot of shows. I know I just actually did a video over SOA, and SOA is like one of my all-time favorite shows. And when Mayans come out, it's like first 30 minutes into the first episode of Mayans, we saw Gemma, we saw familiar characters. They started talking about Jax and so forth along those lines. And I'm like, no. I don't want to see Sons of Anarchy. I want to see Mayans. You try to do something different. Don't just try to bring me onto this show because I love the previous show. This is a spinoff. Let's go something new, something different. Let me see what this show's made of. Last seasons of Mayans MC, they showed me what they're made of, and it's pretty darn good. Now, I want the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian to stand on their own like that, too. It says on Twitter he shared the video stating, a lot of y'all clearly in Disney, Marvel, Sony, and Lucasfilm all know that and know you'll come running anytime they jangle the keys of nostalgia bait. You prove them right when you support them. Check out the full video now live on YouTube. In the video, he explores the idea, stating, we show something that was part of the franchise that will give them the member berries that they consider what used to be the good old days. And if you eat this shit, you are part of the problem, man. Now sometimes it's just a flat out bait and switch, not always, but sometimes it's a flat out bait and switch. It's like here's the nostalgia, here's the thing that really got you reeled in, and then they switch on. We've seen this happen a couple of times with some of these franchises. This isn't even exclusive to Marvel, DC, or Star Wars, but it's the same thing, he continued, and that's truly honest in a lot of ways. I kind of a show that I felt like I thought without a doubt was going to do the bait and switch, but they kind of, I don't know, did it the right way. I thought, at least in my eyes, was Hawkeye. I felt like instead of just bringing this character on that just knew everything, they made it feel like the original Hawkeye was teaching her something, showing her how to be that character and letting her from the beginning take hold of that mantle on her own in a lot of ways. I thought that worked. I do not think it worked in The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker when it come to Luke Skywalker and Ray. It was terrible. They only brought Luke in there to give her credibility. They only made The Rise of Skywalker the Rise of Skywalker. They gave it that title because they knew that name meant something. And if they could somehow tie Ray to that name, then then maybe fans after the initial backlash would accept her. And that's what they were hoping for. Thankfully, fans were pissed about it. And I'm glad. I'm still pissed about it. I ain't saying the word Ray Skywalker because it's so ridiculous. Especially her being a Palpatine. It's like a slap in the face. It's like the villains won. I mean, that's the way it felt to me. Um, but anyways, he goes on to state, July then opined, this is what I've been trying to convince people of. You can't operate as if these guys are owed the benefit of the doubt. I don't personally think they are. I think they made their goals and motives abundantly clear, especially with what happened to Gina Carano. There is an acceptable line of thinking where you can have publicly, but if you are a raging authoritarian leftist, Pedro Pascal, basically all these Disney actors and actresses, like all these people actually, they have the same position. They have, they can have those publicly. You have something to the contrary, you say you getting the effing out of here, he declared. Uh, they don't want to be associated. You see the slap Whoopi Goldberg on the wrist. They don't like you. You're not a leftist, at least authoritarian leftist. They don't like you. Get out, July stated. And that's true. That's true. Talk about look at the difference between the reaction that they had with Joe Rogan, who kind of wanted to, straddle that fence between the left and the right. And then you have somebody that's on the far, far fringes of the left when it comes to Whoopi Goldberg, and she says something that is just out of this world. And they want to ban her. I mean, they don't want to ban her, but they want to go after Joe Rogan because they don't like people that have, or maybe allow for different opinions. That's really what it comes down to in a lot of ways. But, even back to the original thing of this video, um, I feel like Disney Plus is kind of pulling this. And I kind of felt like to a certain extent, Disney Plus pulled a bait and switch in the Book of Boba Fett. You have Din Djarin taking over for Boba Fett. Those were the two best episodes. It was member berries all over again. Hey, you remember how much you liked Grogu? Well, hey, guess what? We're bringing him back. You remember how much that you liked seeing Luke Skywalker on screen again? Bringing him back. Guess who else we're going to bring back with him? Ahsoka Tano. You like her? Yes, you do. That is that is what they have been doing all season in this show. They have been they thought that maybe they even brought in Danny Trejo. They've done everything on this show to try to bring back those member berries. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, it hasn't worked. The last two episodes were good, but they were good because Cad Bane. I totally forgot about Cad Bane. Definitely love that. That was a member berry I will accept. But that being said, they want you to forget how bad the show actually is by bringing you these member berries. And it works. It even worked with me to a certain extent, man, when I'm watching that last episode of the Book of Boba Fett. And I'm like, whoa, we got Cad Bane here. I was like, this is really good. And then I was like, but what about the first 3 or 4 episodes of this season and how bad that was? Am I just completely supposed to forget that? Because you had like 1 or 2 good episodes, I'm just supposed to forget that it was bad for the previous 4? Like, come on. That's the way I feel towards all this junk. I feel like it is just enough to get people hooked, and whether they feel bad saying anything bad about the product, because they're still in the hope of maybe getting a little bit more nostalgia out of it. Just squeezing just a little bit more of that nostalgia out. It continued, they've told you. Now I know, for example, with Marvel, Kevin Feige, Victoria Alonso said, we don't give a shit about source material. We are focusing on diversity and representation. Oh my goodness. Like, what a statement. In other buzz terms, that has nothing to do with giving good, accurate depictions of characters that have been developed for 30 plus years plus. Look, truth is there's not going to be anything good until we get past this representation thing. Representation was happening on a normal level before they tried to amplify it and try to ruin everything. Now it's a joke. And now I don't know if, well, I mean, you take what's the guy that played Tyrion Lannister? Peter Dinklage. You take that role. I mean, you have, dwarves that were playing, in these fantasy these fantasy series, these movies and so forth. They were gonna be in the new Stowe White. And then he's like, nah, we don't want that anymore. And so now they're like canceling all of that. And good luck on trying to, if you are in that group, try finding a job now, thanks to it. Because once it becomes a joke, and once people start catching on and being like, oh man, they're only there because of this, this, and this, it it makes a person that is actually in there that maybe had won that job on a reasonable, fair note, seemed lessened, because it makes people think, well, you only have this part because of X, Y, and Z. That's never what you want when you're trying to make inclusion into anything. You want it to be natural. You want people to accept it on its own, to not feel weird about it when it happens. They've done the polar opposite of it because they made it their prime agenda. They put it over plot, they put it over story, they put it over characters, they put it over nostalgia. They've done all of that to try to push this narrative, and that narrative will fail simply because of their own stupidity, their own actions, by trying to push it so hard. That's the way I look at it. But anyways, he says a lot of things. Eric July, definitely a dude to catch. He is, like I said, very knowledgeable. I mean, anytime that he speaks on comics or anything like that, or these, DC Marvel, man, I listen because this dude knows what he's talking about when it comes to it. Definitely check out his channel. But let me know what y'all think, guys. Do you feel like nostalgia bait is really a thing? Do you believe that it's maybe ruining a lot of shows in a lot of ways, or it's making fans think that shows are better than what they actually are? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching. Y'all take care.